The Adams Archive.
Russia believes the U.S. was behind the Kremlin drone attack in Kiev, what was believed to be an assassination attempt on Vladimir Putin's life. Now, I have my own thoughts about this. We'll get into this article in just a minute here, but if you saw the video on this, there was a video of this little flying object flying right over the Kremlin and exploding right on the flagpole, right on the very position of the building that you would have known that this was the Kremlin. Okay, so I think it's an interesting idea here that this could have been a false flag. I absolutely think that this situation, I don't see any way, anyhow, that a drone gets that close to that building with Vladimir Putin in it. Okay. I also don't see how, and what you see in this video is it flies towards this flagpole and then it just explodes in this tiny little explosion out of, for nothing that you see in the air for any reason that it explodes, but it just randomly explodes right over the flag. Okay. So what some people are saying is they believe that it was a false flag attack. And I tend to agree with this, with the way that it all went down. I don't think that you're killing Vladimir Putin with a tiny little drone in their their Capitol building or their White House type building. Okay. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't think that that's how you're going about that if you're Ukraine. Okay. Now, on the other side of that, he is blaming the United States and Ukraine for this, right? And saying that, and some people believe that he is doing this as a false flag in order to gain popular opinion. That's coming up to their celebration day. I forget what the name of it is. Basically, when they won the war over Germany. I believe it's, Parade Day or something like that. But I believe that that's what happened. I believe this was a false flag. Now, if it's not, I don't think it changes the outcome very much. I think we're going to see retaliation by Vladimir Putin in Russia as a result of this. I don't think that we'll see it against the United States, but could you imagine if they now start going after Zelensky specifically and targeting him, right? And we all know Russia could level Ukraine in just a matter of minutes, right? So it's so weird to me, right? We talk about how this war is going and how basically imagine getting in a fist fight with somebody, but only flicking them. That's what this war seems like to me, right? There's allegedly been 20,000 or so Russians who have died. That's the claim by the United States anyways. But it seems like we have the kitty gloves on, right? It seems like we in this specific war that we're seeing play out with Ukraine, like they're not actually trying to destroy each other. And there's a reason for that, right? Vladimir Putin is trying to absorb Ukraine as his own. So he doesn't want to just level his own property, according to him. And he also doesn't want to have the citizens of Ukraine have so much disdain for him because of the blood loss that they wouldn't have any allegiance to him if and when he takes over Ukraine. So we're seeing this weird little flicking war. Instead of punches being thrown, they're flicking each other's ear. And the way this war is going down is situations like this, right? So I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I don't know what the ramifications of this going to be, but I do believe that this was a false flag. I don't think the United States would go about assassinating President Putin. So let's go ahead and read this article. What the title of this article by Reuters says is Moscow says U.S. is behind Kremlin drone attack. Air raid sirens sound in Kiev. It says Russia said on Thursday that the United States was behind an alleged drone attack on the Kremlin, aiming to kill Vladimir Putin, and as air raid sirens sounded again in Kiev, as darkness fell following attacks the previous night. Residents who made their way to air raid shelters told Reuters they saw drones in the air. Ukrainian President Zelensky speaking in a Hague, in the Hague, whatever the hell that is, after visiting the International Court of Justice, said Putin must be brought to justice over the war and that Kiev would work to create a new tribunal for this purpose. Putin's spokesperson, like he's just going to create a tribunal they're going to find him guilty, and then all of a sudden he's going to be brought to justice. Like, what a vague thing to think. Putin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, without providing evidence, said Ukraine had acted on U.S. orders with the alleged drone attack on the Kremlin citadel in the early hours of Wednesday. White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby said Peskov was just lying, and that the United States neither encouraged nor enabled Ukraine to strike outside of its borders. So Vladimir Putin believes that the United States gave the order to Ukraine to have Vladimir Putin assassinated. So if that is true, like if that is true, and the United States was providing the intelligence, which in this case, if it's not a false flag, is very likely, Ukraine itself and their vast intelligence network is probably not figuring out exactly where Vladimir Putin is. And we found out through the very last leak that the U.S. has boots on the ground in Ukraine. We found that out. We know that, right? So what would stop them from providing intelligence to show Ukraine where to strike? Now, again, I think it would be silly to do it with a drone, and maybe it was just Ukraine's stupidity that they thought they would actually conduct it that way. But I don't see a place. I don't see a situation where this was done on U.S. orders. But if Vladimir Putin even just thinks that, then that's very dangerous for the United States. That could turn into, or at least give justification to, if it's not what he wanted to begin with, but could still just give justification for Putin to strike Ukraine heavier, go after Zelensky, or even potentially attack the United States. If somebody tried to kill you, right, what type of, response is warranted? Especially if you believe there was a certain individual who did it. Why wouldn't you go after that person in a political situation, right? So Kiev has also denied the involvement in the incident, it says, which followed a string of blasts over the past weekend targeting freight trains and oil depots in western Russia and Russian-controlled Crimea. Moscow blamed Ukraine for those as well. It says attempts to disown this attack, both in Kiev and in Washington, are, of course, absolutely ridiculous. We know very well that decisions about such actions, about such terrorist attacks, are made not in Kiev, but in Washington, Peskov told reporters. Peskov said an urgent investigation is underway, and that any response would be carefully considered and balanced. Russia's foreign ministry said that the alleged drone attack must not go unanswered, and showed Kiev had no desire to end the 15-month-old war at the negotiating table. Russia has increasingly accused the United States of being a direct participant in the war, intent on inflicting a strategic defeat on Moscow. Yeah, of course. I don't think there's anybody who would disagree with that at this point. It says Washington denies this and said that it's arming Kiev to defend itself and retake illegally seized land. So this article goes on and on, but that seems to be the gist of it, right? The White House responded. John Kirby, I believe, the Secretary of Defense, responded and made a statement surrounding this, saying, we don't even know if we're going to investigate this. I don't think we'll ever know who tried to assassinate Vladimir Putin. He said that they're likely not to do an investigation. He said it definitely wasn't us, which of course, and maybe it wasn't, and maybe it was a false flag. So I still stick to that. I still believe that this was potentially a false flag. If it was the U.S. and if it was Ukraine that tried this, then this was a very stupid way to go about trying to kill Vladimir Putin. There's probably much better situations or much better types of attacks that you could do instead of some over a flagpole. It just seems so specific to me that this blew up right in the position, like I said, right in the position where you would have known that it was this building. Seems kind of weird.